So I read Class Rules by Peter W. Cookson Jr., and essentially it's a large social science experiment study that exposes how high schools create long lasting inequalities through the socialization processes that happen throughout high school. And it basically debunks the myth that high schools have been the great equalizers of our society. It actually further goes to say that. Um, because high schools are such an important and identity forming part of students' lives, that social class is an impending force that forms the personal autobiographies of each student, and it becomes the constructs that reproduce our social classes. So it's not necessarily saying that someone from a poor background is going to um, essentially become a person of a poor background after high school, but it is saying that their chances are higher than someone who is from a more elite or upper class. So he actually gives a very literal illustration that helps, I think, everyone understand like where he's going with his entire research, and he takes evidence from five representative high schools of varying social classes. So there's a upper class, an upper middle class, a middle class, a working class, and a underclass. So all of them are very different. They're from different areas in the U.S. And he actually starts by introducing three girls who are from three very different working classes. And this illustration actually helped me understand like just what he meant by social class influencing your class structure after you graduate from high school. So there's Amanda, Sally, and Vivian. And Amanda is from, and all of them have very high GPAs in their schools. They're all high achieving and they all want to succeed. Amanda is from a very upper class elite New England prep school, and her parents are very well off, and they essentially can provide for her. So she has tutors who help reread her stuff. And her school is, they have a bunch of counselors who are just one phone call away from Ivy League. So her statistics show that she has a 95% chance of graduating from college. So even, and they were saying that even if she were a poor student, so she wasn't doing very well in school, the chances of her graduating from college are still 30%, which are still decently good considering if she has a really poor GPA. And it just goes to show you how unequal it is. So then Vivian and Sally are from the working class and underclass. And even despite like the physical difference, like where their parents might not be able to provide for them to go to college, there's also the cultural difference where their parents might not believe in college, where they feel as if they should just start working right after high school and start earning money now. And the statistics show that they are a very, very, their percent of graduating from college is much lower than Amanda's. So it's 8 to 29%. And essentially, Cookson further emphasizes the entire idea of that by saying that class awareness and consciousness are reinforced by what we study and with whom. Not all school curricula are equal. The curricula for children of the wealthy are enriched and demanding. The working class and poor are minimal and boring. And this is found on page 27, which is very early on in the book. So this illustration really got me looking and thinking about the stark contrast between just how different someone from an elite class has it compared to someone who is from an underclass. It's not just the resources that are provided to them, but also the culture that surrounds it and how it's perpetuated through school culture. Where I feel as if Amanda, if she were to not go to college, it would be considered very weird. It'd be an anomaly in her school culture. Whereas for Emma or Vivian and Sally, their school culture would be trying hard would almost be viewed as a taboo. So through the five different high schools, I'm not going to talk about every single one, but Cookson talks about the rite of passage that each high school has for the students. So each student has a different ideology when they go to the school, and something he noticed through all the interviews he had with them. So the upper class school has this idea of power ingrained in them. So they are essentially bred to become the future leaders of America. And it shows through all of the activities that are offered towards them, all of the opportunities that are given to them. And it really just, there's this whole entire stigma that tells them that you guys are going to be the future leaders. There's no other option. There's no room for failure. And then, whereas the working class high school portrays the message of acceptance, that there are no other alternative narratives to what they can have. So they kind of accept the fact that, I might just spend the rest of my life working. I might not be able to reach like this height because it's just not possible. So it's that sense of like resolute acceptance. And then the underclass, I feel like, was the most striking to me because it showed an environment that was something I'm not particularly used to, but by Cookson exposing it, I feel like it really illustrates just how much social class influences how students feel after they graduate high school and how it correlates with how they end up. So Roosevelt High School is a school, very diverse school in the Bronx, and it's in a very poor neighborhood. It's very run down, low income, and a lot of immigrant families. And it honestly supports the rite of passage that by treating the students as criminals because of the high violence rates that do happen around the school. So Cookson describes that there are metal detectors, there are search and seizures with pat downs and everything, just to ensure the safety of the students, but it also kind of gives the student the message that, hey, we don't trust you. We don't believe that you're good students. And the school itself is very run down, as described by Cookson, and it also is stated to look like a prison. So it's almost similar to the prison to school pipeline, where they are basically banking on the fact that these students are probably not going to succeed and are going to end up as convicts or criminals. And a quote that I read was, "The collective memories of underclass young adults are powerful. Their identities are forged in opposition to the dominant culture. Although their understanding of society may lack the polish of a prep school or an upper middle class student, underclass students have a firm grasp of the basic facts of American life today. They know that power is real and that the social order is a hard reality." And that's found on page 104. So I felt as if that, and then Cookson actually goes on and analyzes each of those schools and their rites of passages, but I felt that the upper class versus the underclass were the most interesting, as well as the working class. And so, reading this book, I would say it's kind of dry, to be honest, but it definitely gives you a lot of self-awareness and insight on how the education system correlates with social class. And personally, I feel like it's very true. I completely agree with Cookson, and I'm really glad that he has social scientific evidence that supports it, because I remember people telling me, oh, just apply to state schools because, the chances of you getting into an Ivy League are much slimmer than the school that's down the street, which is considered a magnet school. And it really does show through like the programs offered too. My school just had 7 APs, whereas the school across the street from me had 23. And so it just shows how it's like a snowball effect. If, a school has the culture that, the students don't have to try hard, and there's this acceptance that, there's not going to be anything better after high school. The students themselves won't try as hard, and because of that, like, the school cannot get enough funding because some teachers just don't know how to write grants, or like it's just there's not as many resources readily available. So I feel as if any aspiring teacher should definitely read this book because it definitely makes you compare different schools to something that you may not have ever experienced. And yeah, other than that, I would say it Class Rules takes very abstract concepts and verbalizes them into really, I feel like, coherent and well organized rationalizations. And it really just kind of helps you visualize the issues better. And overall, I really enjoyed it. So thank you for listening.